thank you to the State Library and thank you to CLA for this. I'm delighted to welcome Yolande Wilburn, who has the distinct, she's my librarian. She's my librarian in Santa Cruz where I live, and it's wonderful to see her here. We've been trying to get together for lunch a lot, so maybe we can have our lunch conversation now with everybody on our Zoom session today.
Sounds good. I'm happy to do that.
Well, welcome. So just to remind folks, what we're going to be doing is we'll do Q&A with, we'll have a conversation with Yolande, get to know her a little bit better. As Christine mentioned, we want to give you an opportunity to also ask questions about her. It turns out that Yolande and I have a little bit of similarity in our backgrounds in terms of where we've worked in the past. So Yolande, welcome. And you want to say a few words, and then I'll go in and jump in and say, give people your background.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited about this opportunity, Martine. As you know, I really am passionate about mentoring the next generation of library leaders. And so I'm really so happy to be here and have this opportunity just to talk with you and answer questions for our audience.
Great. Well, welcome. So, let me just tell everybody a little bit about you, since they may not all know, although you're well known around the state. Yolande Wilburn is the newly appointed director of the Santa Cruz Public Libraries. Santa Cruz, by the way, is a JPA, or Joint Powers Authority library. So in Santa Cruz, that means there are 10 libraries, and that's in Santa Cruz County, but there's also the Watsonville Library, which is not part of the system. So it serves the cities of Capitola, Scotts Valley, Santa Cruz, and Santa Cruz County. Yolande, you've had a variety of leadership positions in public, academic, rural, and urban libraries. And you've also worked internationally in Dubai. I'm curious about that. You're a member of the California Library Association's Board of Directors. You received your master's degree in Library and Information Science from San Jose State, go Spartans, and her bachelor's degree in Liberal Studies from the University of Illinois. Well, welcome, Yolande. Did I get that right?
You got it right. Yes, that's absolutely correct.
So what people don't know, may not know, is that you actually started working in the private sector. Tell us a little bit about that. What did you do in the private sector? Not as a librarian, I imagine, right?
Correct. You know, years ago, it's funny because I think when I first started my library career, I read the book and I may be misquoting the title, Freaks, Geeks, and something about, you know, all the things that go on in libraries. And so, you know, I actually started my career, my education as an accounting major. And did some internships as an internal auditor, and determined that I really didn't like that because every time I'd go to talk with people, they'd run away. They were like, that's the auditor. She's trying to get us in trouble. Don't talk to her. And so I kind of, you know, decided, yeah, that's maybe not the career path for me. And so I worked for Citibank. So I've had work at Citibank, and I may be dating myself here, but I worked for Citibank when actually I think it was Citicorp. And that was when the ATM machines first started appearing at banks. And my job was really to service and maintain the ATM machines.
Wow.
Where I got my kind of tech background. So I've never been afraid. Nobody knew what that was. And they said, hey, you're new, go do that. So I was like, sure. So, you know, that really kind of led me down a customer service path. And so I worked with the airlines. So I was a flight attendant for really couple of years, and really enjoyed that because it gave me the opportunity to travel.
What airline?
I worked for United Airlines, and I also worked for Alaska Airlines. Okay. And so as somebody who grew up, you know, we weren't wealthy by any means. We weren't necessarily, I think, living in poverty, but we did not, with 6 kids in the family, we didn't have a lot of opportunities to travel. So, you know, when people came back and said, hey, what'd you do for summer vacation? And they were like, oh, I went to Europe. And I'd be like, yeah, we drove around the block. Like, that was it. You know, for me, the airline was a great way for me to travel when I was young, and I took advantage of that opportunity. And then I actually, what sort of led me to my library career was that I worked as the personnel and public affairs manager for EDCO, which is a refuse and recycling company in Southern California. And, when I got hired there, they said, you're going to learn more about trash than you ever wanted to know. And I did. But it gave me a really great opportunity while I was there to move from customer service supervisor into the position of personnel and public affairs manager with the company. And so it was a shift for me to go into management, but also the position required me to go out and do advocacy with the community. And you don't think about the trash company doing advocacy work, but, because of what we did, we had to establish a rapport with community groups and organizations to ensure that we could continue to pick up the trash and that we were doing it in a responsible and sustainable way. And so it was my job to go out and sort of be the liaison with the community. When people wanted tours of the facility, I would bring them in. When they wanted to know, how do you dispose of those materials, right? That was my job to sort of serve in that purpose, as well as being the personnel manager. So doing that led me to writing a scholarship program and going back to the library. And I utilized the library and really grew up in the library. And it sort of got me thinking about what I really was passionate about and what I wanted to do. And that's when I decided to go back to school and get my master's in library science. And voila, here I am.
Well, I won't ask you how long ago that was, but it sounds like that public affairs job. Did you get a lot of angry people that you had to face in some of those activities?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I think the airline prepared me for that more than anything, right? Because when you're locked in that little metal tube with people, it can get pretty intense. But for me, as personnel and public affairs manager, I got to go out and talk with the community, and we certainly heard sort of complaints. I was sort of that first line of defense when people said, hey, there's toxic waste from your trucks all down the street, clean it up, right? And so that was sort of a part of what I did, and making sure that we took care of our mistakes, and we got that cleaned up and straightened up so the community was.
Well, I want to drill back with you later on about kind of the role that librarians sometimes are not really keen at jumping at, which is, dealing with angry public or the patrons or community organizations. But we'll get to that when we talk about what I call leadership competencies. Okay. So in your career, you also had a little stint over in Dubai. How did that happen?
So I had been developing the innovation lab at Chicago Public Library, and really a successful project. I'd gone out and talked to a lot of different organizations in the community. And with the opening of the innovation lab, it was something that was new. There were other libraries that were doing sort of
Tell us what
spaces.
It is. 'Cause a lot of people may not know about the innovation lab.
Sure. So the innovation lab at Chicago Public was really designed, when we planned it, it was designed to be a space where it would change, right? It could change to do different things. It was our experimental space, right? It was the space where we started out with a maker space. And so that was the first big grant that I wrote with the IMLS. And, we got the money, and they said, 6 months, you have to have that open. And so I frantically worked with colleagues at Chicago Public Library. We got that space opened. We partnered with numerous people in the community who came in and taught classes, but taught people how to make things. Really, it was about economic development growth in Chicago. There were numerous manufacturing jobs that were lost in the economic downturn. And so the innovation space was to serve as that place where people could come in, kind of get their fingers wet and see what digital technology and making was about. But then we would ship them over to like the community college and say, hey, they have a welding certificate. You've done a practice session here. Now go over there and learn it so you can go out and get a job and earn money doing that, right? And so that's really what the Innovation Lab was developed to be, that space where people could come in and test it out and see what that is and understand. And then they would go out to other partner organizations and grow and learn and hone their skills.
Thank you for that background. I
Sure.
interrupted you in terms of your Dubai stint. So
Right.
somehow you got from welding to Dubai.
Yes, this is my connections. So yeah, after developing the Innovation Lab, part of that, the other process that we were doing there with that Innovation Lab grant, we also worked on a Gates Foundation grant dealing with design thinking, and that's where the space was going to change. What should we be doing in libraries? Right? What does the community need us to do? And part of that, because I had been working in a variety of locations around the city of Chicago with different immigrant communities, I was really interested in exploring what library services were like in foreign countries, right? In other international library locations. I loved San Jose State because I had classmates that were from international, other countries. And so I got to hear a little bit about that, wanted to explore that more. And so part of the Gates grant was originally to work with another country.
Wow.
To determine what library services should or might look like. And as a piece of that, Brian Bannon, who was the commissioner at Chicago Public, he actually knew the supervisor of the library in Dubai, where I went to work, and I had received some information actually through San Jose State's job board. They had sent me some information saying, hey, there's this cool position. And so I, reached out to them, and that's actually how I submitted my resume for the position in Dubai, interviewed for it and thought it was a great opportunity. I am so glad that I went because it gave me a whole new perspective on Middle Eastern culture and what someone coming from a country in the Middle East or Africa coming to the United States, kind of what those cultural differences are, and maybe how we can help to sort of bridge that gap.
Was it an exchange program?
It was not an exchange program. So this was a program where originally I could go for 3 years. I determined that after 1 year, it probably wasn't a good fit for me because I have a big mouth. And, for women, let's be realistic. For women, you do not have the same rights or privileges that you have here in the United States. And I think that, especially for me as an African American, right, and having gone through many of the struggles that African Americans in this country have gone through, going to Dubai and then as a woman sort of being put into sort of a second class position, it was difficult, right? But I chose to go to that country. And so that's where I need to adapt to that culture. I'm really so proud that while I was there, I had the opportunity to attend the first ALA-sponsored Sharjah Book Fair. ALA, it was the first time ALA came to the Middle East. The Sheikh of Sharjah was very committed to ensuring that his citizens and community members could read. And so had purchased a library for every Emirati household in that emirate. But, there were still issues with censorship and what you could read and what you couldn't read. And that was very problematic for me, because I think that libraries should be about the freedom to read. So
with leadership being our kind of overarching topic today, I found a quote by you about what your view of leadership is, and I wanted to know if you could expand on it a little bit. And you said that Leadership is the authority given by the people to guide the direction of the organization, profession, or task. So what did you, I think I know, but I don't want to, assume I know. What does that mean?
So for me, this is really about trust. And as leaders, and it's interesting because I had one of my mentees say to me one day, well, they should just do it because I told them they should do it. And I said, well, no, really, it doesn't work that way. You have no authority, right? I may be, my title may be director of libraries, but I have no authority to do anything without the trust and support and dedication of the team that I work with, right? They are putting their trust in me, that I am going to have their best interests and the organization's best interests at heart, and that we're all going to move the organization forward in a positive manner. And so that's where, I feel like, authority is not, I don't have it just because I have the title. The authority is given to me by all of the team members that I work with every day, by the community members that put their faith in me and allow me to help them guide their library services.
So that's interesting. I agree with you, but I also think that there is a time, and you're kind of in that bubble now, I'll call it the honeymoon, where you come into a position and people want to trust you, so they're going to give you benefit of a doubt. It's still trust, right? And at some point, either you continue to maintain that trust or you lose it over time because people discover that you're not trustworthy, or there are things that you've said and you've been duplicitous or whatever. I'm sure none of us have ever worked for anybody like that. However, so the trust, is something that is an important leadership competency, right? There are other competencies that, for example, that were identified by by LAMA, the American Library Association's LAMA division, which is now called CORE, I think. So qualities, such as, emotional intelligence, communication. When you are in a leadership position, you have the opportunity to look at others, and maybe you see people coming into the organization, whether it's in the library or people from the community. What are you looking for that helps you say, this person has leadership qualities? And what are the leadership qualities that you see that are, wow, I really admire this? Trustworthiness certainly could be one of them, but are there other things that you look at that you say, gosh, I love the way the person handled this, angry person, so there's some display of emotional intelligence. Are there things like that that you look at?
Absolutely. And actually, that's a big one for me, is emotional intelligence, because I think you have to have a little bit of a thick skin to be a leader, right? People may not always agree with everything you say. And that's where, like I say, it's you build that trust over time. There might be that honeymoon phase, but you build that trust over time. People may not always believe what you are, where you're leading them, but you have to have the emotional intelligence not to react to that, right? Mm-hmm. To really research and be grounded in the path that you're taking, and understanding that path could change, right? That's emotional intelligence, right? Being able to say, okay, we tried it that way, that didn't work, so let's go another direction. And it's okay if people don't feel the same way I feel, and I can't let that bother me. So that's a big one for me. The other one is, I think, team building. That is huge, because I think you really do have to build and develop the team around you for your organization to be successful. It's not about me, it's about the organization, right? And then I think for me, another key factor probably is the marketing and advocacy, right? We have to be able to tell our story and we have to be able to advocate for the things that we need. You know, we're competing oftentimes with limited resource budgets, limited staffing. And so we have to be able to advocate for what we need in order to accomplish our goals and be successful. So those are just three of the things that I really look for in team members. I think years ago, I read the book, The 10 Phases of Innovation. And that book talks about how, you know, if you have great team members, even though they may not all agree, right? They all might, each of them plays a role and may do something that there's something that they're really great at, right?
Yeah.
And I've really found success in building teams where I really try to identify, and oftentimes people don't even know what they're really good at, right? I remember Brian, when I was coming up, Brian Bannon,
yes.
Brian Bannon saying to me, "Oh, Yolande," because I had to go on TV and do a television spot. And he's like, "You know, Yolande, you do it." I was like, "Well, you're the commissioner." And so I went on and did it. And afterwards he said, "Wow, you're really good at public speaking." I was like, no, I've never thought of myself as being good at public speaking. But that's a place where Brian really helped to develop and support me and gave me those opportunities. Even though I wasn't gung-ho about going out there the first time, he sort of said, "Yep, you can do this." Yeah. And that's what, you know, sort of gave me that skill and helped me to develop. And so I think that's a huge part of being a leader, is one, being able to advocate, but having those team building opportunities as well.
And it sounds like seeing the talent in others and helping them develop that even more.
Absolutely.
As Brian did with you.
Absolutely.
So, you know, here's a controversial one, and it's not necessarily competency, but people sometimes confuse this one, or at least I do, I should say for myself. And that's loyalty. I worked in Brooklyn, as you may know, and Brooklyn is a private nonprofit, it's a public nonprofit or a corporation like the other libraries in New York City. And, you know, people sometimes confuse my role and thought that in order to have in with the boss, they needed to exercise or demonstrate their loyalty, you know, to the point where it was excessive. I mean, I had people who wanted to go pick up my kids from school for me. It's like, well, no. So how important is loyalty to you as an individual? And is that something that you value, or how do you look at that?
I think loyalty is definitely something that I value, but it's not to the point of, you know, I don't know that anybody's ever, I'll go pick up your kids if you, so for me, I think it's loyalty both ways. And I, you know, as an example, I have to, you know, I think about when I was in Nevada County, and, you know, we have a team that we've built, and, you know, something may happen, right? We all are human beings. We all live lives. We all have children or loved ones or spouses or brothers or sisters, family, friends who may need us. There might be things that we're going through. And so we have to acknowledge to one another that when we come every day, that we're going to come being the best us that we can be. But sometimes those other things get us down.
Right.
And we have to be loyal enough to say to our colleagues, right? And to say to our bosses, you know, this is a tough one for me. Bear with me. I'm here, but I'm just going through some things right now, right? And then as the leader saying, how can I help you, right? Can I get you some EAP services? Are there some things that we can do to help you? Right. I think that's where loyalty for me comes into play, that we're all trying to work together, and that every day we come in, we, if yesterday was a bad day for somebody, we don't hold that against them. We come in fresh, we say, hello, let's do this today and let's team up. And that's loyalty to me, right? That we're committed to this together.
So just a quick side note, Christine, somebody's asking if we could put on some closed captions. I don't know if we can do that on your end.
I did.
Okay, thank you. part of being a leader also requires sometimes having to say no. And sometimes those no's are simple. Sometimes those no's are very difficult. So how do you say no?
I tend to be a straight shooter. And I'm direct with most people. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it, tell you. And I had someone say to me once, wow, I knew that's what it was, but I can't believe you just said it to me, right? If there's no, I'm not doing it to hurt anyone's feelings. I'm not saying, but I'm going to be direct. I don't want it to be what I am trying. I don't want the bad news to be sugarcoated to the point where you think it's not bad news, that it's something great is going to happen. No, we're not doing that. And how can we get past this, right?
Right.
What can I do? And that's for me, I'm always looking at, okay, if I have to say no, what are the things we can do that can make this work? How can we turn that no into a positive experience? And I think that's something that I learned early on in my career in the private sector. I think one of my employers at that time, it might have been Citicorp, they sent me to like the Dale Carnegie classes at that time were really popular. And so really thinking about how other people want to be treated, but also about what they need, right? That's, I think, a key piece to it. It may, and I think Dr. Chow had mentioned this, that it was something about, treat people the way that they want to be treated, right? Because if you say, well, that's the way I want to be treated, right?
Right.
In this instance, I want to be told if it's a no, I don't want anybody to confuse me or make me think it's a yes
Right.
when it's a no.
Right.
So I'd rather have the no. And so I tend to be very direct in just telling people that. I don't do it in a cruel way, but I do try to be as direct as I can and clear, and add to that, okay, so what can we do? If this is a no, what could we get to that would be acceptable?
So part of this conversation about leadership is also about the challenges that one faces as a leader. It may be too premature at this point, but you've been on the job for 6 weeks but are there any incidents, and you don't have to, give any names or locations, but where those challenges have been so significant that either you've thrown the towel in, or you've had to have a major confrontation, or you just have had, you had it and said, yeah, whatever. Has there been a challenge like that for you?
I'm definitely not here at Santa Cruz, other than I see that Bruce Cotter is on here, and I say that Bruce raised that, the Friends raised that $1 million, and I'm like, why? No, that's, no, but the honeymoon is still on here in Santa Cruz, Martine. But I think that, yes, as a leader, I've been in the position where I had to deliver the bad news, and there were very challenging circumstances around it. And again, trying to be sensitive to people in this is where we are. And I think that as leaders, there are times when we have to discipline people, right? Because it is for the best. It's the best thing we can do for the organization. If we have someone who's not an active team member, who's not coming in and giving it their best every day, and we've tried to work with them and we're not getting any movement, then we certainly have a duty to do something about that, so that the other, team members who are coming in every day and doing a great job aren't sort of saying, well, why is this happening, right? So yes, I have had to do that. And it's difficult, but I think it is, as a leader, it's part of what we have to do. And it's our responsibility to do it.
That's right. And I found that often making those hard decisions or meeting those challenges head on not only makes you an individual stronger and to learn from that, but it also, I think, generates greater respect from outsiders. I mean, assuming that, the decision or the challenge you met required that. I mean, there have been people who think they're being, challenged and, they're really, it doesn't really exist. But
Right. Well, and I will say this, Martine, that, it's been, I've seen circumstances where someone's not happy, right? And that's why it's happening
Yes.
every day. And I tend to I've sat down with them and had the conversation about, is this really where you want to be?
Right.
And it doesn't seem that way to me, but that's up to you, right? I'm here to help you get to where you need to be here so you can be successful. But if that's not working, how can I help you
Right.
get to somewhere that you are going to be happy? And I've even worked with some of my team members where they expressed, yep, I'm not happy. Okay, let's get you to where you want to be. Hey, I understand that you're interested in XYZ. I see that there is this position here that might be an opportunity for you. Here might be some classes that you might want to enroll in to get you to where you want to be.
Right.
And in cases where I've done that, Martine, I've found them to be very successful, where that person went on to do great things elsewhere because they were then doing something that they were passionate about and that they really wanted to do. And it was someplace they really wanted to be.
So if you ever had to counsel me, I would walk out of that room and say, wow, she did me a favor. Thank you.
Exactly. Yes.
So you're involved now with the California Library Association. It's not new to you. You've been involved with the association for years. You are on the board there. How has your involvement in these associations helped you develop as a leader, and what's the benefit of it?
I started really attending, California Library Association conferences when I first came out to California and became a librarian. I found it very informative because I got to meet people. I'm a fan, and you may have heard me say this before. When I go to conferences, I try not to sit with people who I know. I just pick tables randomly and sit down with people who I hopefully don't know, because that's when I tend to learn more. And even when I go to PLA or ALA, right, same thing. But at CLA, because it is California libraries largely, I've had the opportunity to meet and connect with a number of professionals in the field, and that's professionals that have been in the business or in the field for a long time, and those who are just entering. And so I have gotten some really great feedback professionally. I've been able to reach out and network with those colleagues to be able to, when I think about starting a project, or when my team members, they are going to do a project, or we collaborate and we say, hey, we think we should be doing this, right? Oh, I know so-and-so at this library is doing that. Here's their number, call them. We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
We just need to talk to one another more, right? And so that's where the professional association with California Library Association has really benefited me. It's also allowed me to find opportunities to grow and serve. As you said, I'm on the California Library Association Board of Directors now. I've served on the California Library Association Advocacy and Legislative Committee. I served as co-chair last year. Huge benefit. It really, being on the Ledge Committee and following sort of in that path, has really taught me about library funding at the state and federal level, and how we have to advocate for that funding in order to be able to get our libraries in the place that we need to be. And I'm really so pleased that last year, the $439 million infrastructure bill came through, right? We've been working on that one for such a long time, and it is so critical to us being able to provide library services in California for the future. And so that I'm so proud to have worked and advocated and pushed for that legislation to go through.
Well, we're excited about that here in Santa Cruz, as you know, because of the building projects that we've got, that you have, I should say. But I'll include myself in the community because with my colleague Bruce and others, we're also doing our part as volunteers to help, make sure that those projects go through and are completed and have, the best of what they can have and that money can raise. But the infrastructure bill that you mentioned at the state, huge amount of money, came at a time when, I think we could really use it really well. You're going to apply for some of that money for Santa Cruz?
We absolutely are. Yes, absolutely. It was just in a meeting right before this one where we were talking about that and trying to get our ducks in a row so that we can apply. We have the phenomenal, one of the things that actually drew me to Santa Cruz is that this community is committed to building and renovating their libraries. And that is a big plus for me, right? That shows really the support of the community is behind this. And one of the big ones that is yet to come, this year we'll open 5 new or renovated libraries. And then in 2023, we'll be opening Aptos. As you know, that's a groundbreaking this March and brand new library next year. And then the Live Oak Annex at the Simpkins Swim Center will be opening next year. But then after that, we're looking to break ground on the downtown mixed use project. And so that is a huge development. And I think it's where we should be thinking not just as libraries, but as good stewards of our communities, in that it will be the library. There is a childcare facility slated to go in next to the library. And I think that's an area where the state library and our public library systems have been looking at how can we have some collaboration. But then in addition to that, there will be affordable housing built in the same development, in that same property. And so we're really excited about being a part of that. And we will definitely be applying for as much as we can get, that full 10 million to get, kind of put onto that project.
Well, for the folks who are not in Santa Cruz, they might be shocked to know that there's actually a group, a self-proclaimed group that is in opposition to the new downtown library. And it's unbelievable, but I guess that's democracy at action, at work. They're actually trying to get signatures on the ballot to oppose it in November. I hope it doesn't happen because that, we will defeat it if it does get on the ballot. But so here you are, still in your honeymoon. And now you've been, I'm making this up, of course, but now they've invited you to come and give the arguments why, this shouldn't happen. So what do you say to them?
Yeah, I think that the arguments are not mine to give. I think it's really my understanding is that there are some key concerns. I've looked at some of those arguments, and I don't necessarily think they are reasons why you don't build a new library, right? I want to, I've met with some of them already,
yes,
and had conversations. And in those conversations, we've talked about, the cost of renovating the existing building with all of its seismic retrofitting, asbestos,
yes,
right? The footprint of that space, as well as ADA issues, fire code, all of the pieces that we have to do to that building. In the end, it's not worth our investing money into that process, only to have to turn around probably in 5 to 10 years and move out of that building because it's completely obsolete at that point.
Right.
And so that's really where I think the rubber meets the road on the city of Santa Cruz wanting to build this new facility, because they've recognized our infrastructure on these buildings is done, right? It's the useful life is over. Let's try and build new with new fire code, with HVAC systems where we can filter the air, because fires are the norm here, right? PSPS is the norm here. Let's prepare ourselves. Let's get solar power, right? There are lots of things that we need to do to ensure that not only do we have great 21st century library spaces for our public to be able to use, but also that are environmentally sustainable for our communities. Yeah.
Right.
So that's really the conversations that I've been having with them.
Well, we're right behind you, and we'll lead when we need to lead you. All right. I'm speaking on behalf of the Friends, right, Bruce? Bruce Cotter is joining us. He's our president, or executive director, excuse me, of the Friends of the Santa Cruz Public Library. So, so you also talked a bit about your mentoring, and that's a characteristic that the older I get, I understand the value of, because I've recognized people who helped me kind of succeed in my career, or showed me some ideas that, and they said, take it if you want it. And now it's time to give back, okay, for me. And in terms of your mentoring, whether mentoring others or the mentoring that you've received, are there any outstanding examples that you would say that, if I hadn't met so-and-so, or if I hadn't taken somebody's class, I would not have, learned what I'd learned? Anything like that that comes up?
Absolutely. I think probably I had some great instructors at San Jose State University. I have to say, Patty Wong, we all know Patty Wong. She was my grant writing instructor. So if I don't get this grant for 10 million, I'm going to get Patty, right? I want my money back on that course. But no, I think that Patty Wong was a great mentor for me. Straight out of San Jose State, out of library school. One, I don't know, when I grew up, and I went to the library, there was no one there who looked like me. There was no one there who looked like Patty. And so having someone who sort of took me under their wing and said, hey, here's some direction. And Patty is one of those people that throughout my career, I've reached out to her. She was my instructor, but even after I graduated, I touched base with her, and we've continued to keep in touch over the years. And now we're close to one another again. We were in Southern California, and we're in close proximity now. So Patty Wong has been one of those people for me. But also when I worked at LA County, Stephen Klein, and I worked with him for a brief period of time before he retired. Stephen Klein just was phenomenal. I was really interested in legislative advocacy, and Stephen, that was sort of his big thing. But Stephen really taught me a lot about communicating with various community groups. I worked with the city of Manhattan Beach very closely because I managed that library, and going to city council meetings and, trying to serve as that liaison where you're trying to keep everyone happy, but sometimes you have to say no, right? So he really helped me to hone that process. So Stephen Klein served as a great mentor to me. And then I would say, Rick Haffey in Nevada County, and he was the county CEO. Rick Haffey, I think that when I went to Nevada County, I went there because it was just so beautiful. Reminds me of Santa Cruz, which is why I love being back here, right? But I think that one of the things that Rick did was really, he devoted a lot of his budget, a substantial portion of the budget, to training his team, right? A lot of time and energy and funding spent in the development of the team members. And I think that's where I received some emotional intelligence training. I went through like community academies and got to know everyone in the community. And I know Santa Cruz has that similar thing, the Community Academy, which I'll be going through here. But no other organization that I had worked with up until that time made those opportunities available. And so I would say, you know, if as I mentor people, I always tell them to take those opportunities when they come along, to explore that, never be afraid to go out and talk to other members of the community and get that training that you need. But also, I will say, going even further back to when I began at Chicago Public Library, you know, not just Brian Bannon, but I think that there was a librarian there who I worked with, Philip Turner, African-American, and he was actually a library assistant because he didn't have a master's in library science. And he had worked with the library for a number of years. But one of the things that Philip did for me was, he sort of, as a new library person, right? I had all these ideas, right? I said, hey, can't we change that? It should be African-American interest wall. But I don't have the authority to do that at the level that I was coming when I first started at Chicago Public. I started as a library page while I was working on my master's degree, because that was the only way you could get a job. They weren't hiring any librarians. So I had the opportunity, thanks to Philip Turner. He really worked with me and mentored me and allowed me to make those changes by him saying, I have the authority to do it. So you tell me your great idea and I'm going to help you do it. Right.
That's great.
And so that's what really got me started on my path. And I just really appreciate all of the people who have stepped up to help mentor me and guide me along the way.
And you emphasize, I think, that, you know, it's not about rank. It's not about, you know, level of responsibility. Anybody can assume a mentoring role or be mentored. By the way, put that on your list, because Philip Turner and I worked together when I worked in Chicago back in the day. I'll tell you some Philip Turner stories. In the meantime,
yes, see,
yes,
library land is a very small world.
That's right. And everybody's watching, Yolande. Everybody's watching. So, Yolande, I learned a couple of interesting things when we were kind of getting ready for this about you, and just kind of shifting gears a little bit here. But you mentioned that you were a family of 6 kids. Where do you line up in that?
I'm in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm in the middle. I was once told, yeah, you're the negotiator because you had to negotiate between us. You're a middle child, aren't you? I've been told that you're a middle child, aren't you? Because yes, I've had to negotiate and manage between my older siblings and the, you know, the younger ones. And so, yeah, I think that may be where I got it from. And
then you're a golfer.
I do like to golf. Yes, I like to golf. I'm not going to say that I'm really good. I'm no Tiger Woods, but I do like to golf, to get out for fun. I do love to hike as well. I think that's my big thing. I love being able to get out and hike and just enjoy nature, whether it's walking along the beach or walking on some of the trails here. I have to tell you, the first week that I was here in Santa Cruz, my management team here did a fantastic thing, and we've decided, I told them we should do this at least once a quarter. For one of our managers meetings, we all met at the Henry Crowell State Park, and we did a hike through the redwoods, nice. Which I think was fantastic. It's a great team building activity for us, and we really got to bond as a team. So I'm looking forward to doing more of that.
So that's wonderful. That's a great idea. And you're in the right place for hiking. You're in good place, I think, for golfing, although I'm not a golfer, so I can't tell you. But you know what? You just mentioned surfing. Are you gonna get aboard? You know,
I met, so it's funny you say that. I was at a luncheon or a little coffee that some of the community members held to introduce me a couple of weeks ago. And I met a woman, Bella, and she actually is founded Black Surf Santa Cruz. She teaches Black people to surf because, you know, I don't know, I don't surf. So I may have to reach out to her and get aboard and have her teach me how to surf. But yeah.
There you go. So I'm going to encourage people to put some questions in there for us. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are. We've got a lot of accolades and thank yous for the presentation and conversation. Any questions from any of you who are listening in today? We appreciate, here's your opportunity. Yolanda's hard to pin down. She's a busy woman, and so if you have questions, now's the time.
Yeah, I'm finding that my schedule here, I'm like going on week 6, and I'm finally starting to see a few slots of opening in my schedule. So, but I'm really glad that I've had the time to block this off and do this. Because as I said, I just love being able to mentor the next generation. And what's really interesting is my son, so I have a son. He is now 26 and he lives in the Seattle area, but his high school girlfriend had reached out to me about a year ago and said, hey, I'm thinking about going to library school. What is that like? And so I just loved his high school girlfriend. And so now she's like my best friend. And I'm dragging her in. So she's going to San Jose State, and we're helping to get that next generation of librarians in.
Is she still going out with your son?
She is not, sadly. He has another girlfriend, but please don't tell him I said it. That.
Well, we'll have to strike that because you never know. This gets
there you go. There you go.
Well, I've certainly enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that people in our audience have enjoyed it as well. You are a breath of fresh air for Santa Cruz, and nice to have you in our leadership position for the library. I think for me personally, this is a great, opportunity for not only you, but for the community, and we're all going to benefit from it. So without seeing any questions here.
I do see there's, yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Go ahead.
So we do have a question from Bjorn, and it says, any more thoughts about fostering staff morale and cooperation after the fragmentation and even trauma resulting from the pandemic and general social turmoil?
Yeah, I think that is a really challenging, that's a tough question that I think we're all facing with libraries today. And I think that this is going to, let me say right now, first of all, we're still in a state of crisis, right? We're still in a state of changing times. The state just is going to be lifting the mask mandate. And I know that the county here in Santa Cruz, and each county or city may be different. So I think we have a lot of very confusing information that's coming at all of us right now. And so I think what we have to do really is try to, as I said, rely on one another to gather strength on this. Hopefully, we're going to get to the point where we can get back to normal as what we think of as normal. But I think just having that conversation, Bjorn, with, how can we help people? And right now I'm going out. I did a listening session at one of our branches the other day. I'm going to be going out to all of our locations to really talk with staff about what it is that we can do. How can I help you? How can I try to make life easier? Now, we have to recognize we want to stay open. We want to continue to serve our communities because that's where our value as libraries comes from, right? We are a community asset that the public relies on in order to be able for them to function. And so I think EAP, we have EAP resources. We have a variety of other options that we might be able to offer to people with regard to getting some training, getting some stress relief. We've been offering a variety, the California State Library, and Martine, you're aware of this, has been offering a number of sessions through the Info People courses and through the Call Academy to help people with emotional intelligence and with de-escalation training, all of those types of things. So I think by us all getting more training and really trying to understand we're all going through this together. And again, I'm going out and I want to hear from staff, and people may not think that I really do, but I really do. When I say I'm coming out to hear what you have to say, I want to hear what you have to say, but I also want our staff and our team members to take stock of what it is that they need, right? And so you too have to be a part of the solution. Like, I can't tell you what you need if you can't tell me what you need. I can't help you with what you need if you can't explain to me what it is specifically that I can do that can help you. And so I think that's where we've got to come together, and that's why I want to listen to what staff have to say. And I'm open to hearing, everything. And then let's work together to try and find a solution.
And I think you'd also agree that there are some situations where you may not have the skill set to be able to help somebody get beyond whatever is a concern of theirs, and to be able to know, recognize that, but also to be able to refer them to a place where they can perhaps get some of that help as well.
Correct.
Well, I'm happy to see that you're visiting all the branches. One of my colleagues, you remember Chris Brown, who was here in, was he Santa Clara County, I guess most recently,
Yes.
but now he's the commissioner of the Chicago Public Library. He and I've had a couple conversations because he knew I worked in Chicago and in the past. And he said, the first 6 months, I'm going to make it to all the branch libraries. And, there are 80 branches in that in Chicago. And well, he did it. He did it. That's like, so if he can do 80, you can do 10.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, it's great. I love being able to go out and talk with the staff, but part of that, and I will say that, yes, it's only 10, and I've been to them all. I have visited them all. These listening sessions are very specific. But I've been to them all, and the best part of it here is that right now I'm going to the branches that we have that are open, and having those listening sessions. But I'm also going around to the branches that are still under construction. And so that's where, I'm taking a look at the buildings and making sure that when the staff do get back in there, that we're ready for our staff to go in as well. I'm a firm believer that our buildings should, in addition to serving our public well, our facilities should serve our staff well. And I know I love our architects, but they don't always design functionally for what we do. And so, I always like to explore those back areas and make sure, hey, did we talk to staff? Is that going to be really functional? And how we can make their lives easier and better. So, yeah.
Well, Yolande, I want to thank you again for sharing your leadership journey with us. And I'm sure that there'll be many more conversations that you and I will have, but you're an asset to this community. So thank you for being here. And I want to, on behalf of the audience and on behalf of CLA and our funders, thank you very much for your conversation.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for coming. I really appreciate it. And I will look for you all out in library land. Feel free to email me if you have any further questions. And as I said, I'm always happy I'll answer anything. So.
All right, audience, I want to tell you that next month, March 17th, we'll have our next My Leadership Journey session. And that will be with Dr. Romelia Salinas, who is the Vice President and incoming President for Reforma, the Reforma National Organization, which is the association to promote library services to the Spanish-speaking and Latino community. Dr. Salinas is the Dean of Libraries at San Antonio College in Los Angeles. So we hope to see you then, if not sooner. Again, Yolande, thank you so much. It was a delight speaking with you and getting to know you better. Everybody, thank you.
Pleasure.